Tonight on News 5 Live, police caught on camera. Videos go viral of police arresting a tourist for mask violation, and in a separate video of an officer putting a man in a chokehold. We'll tell you what the commissioner has to say about these actions. Health Minister concerned about a possible third wave of COVID-19 in Belize. A $250,000 lawsuit is filed against government by the family of a man who died in police custody. And FCD explains why they're concerned about the Caracol Road. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live from Monday, January 25th. I am Marlene Cuellar. La Isla Cariñosa may not have been so loving to an American tourist over the weekend. A video went viral of a female American tourist arrested by two police officers in Kikocker Village. The video shows police arresting the tourist for not wearing her face mask properly. The woman refused to be arrested, telling the officers that she has read the mask rules for Belize and was eating her chicken wings while walking, and that was why she did not have her mask on. Online, The public threw their support behind the tourists and condemned the officers. So did Commissioner Chester Williams, who quickly ordered the woman's release, posting on Facebook, quote, "The officers erred as if the lady was eating, which in fact she had something in her hand that she was eating, then the officers overreacted. The lady should not have been arrested," unquote. But today, Commissioner Williams had a new perspective as he told the media there was more to the story than what the video told.
From my understanding is that the officers had passed moments before and they saw the tourists without a mask. And they had warned the tourists about not wearing a mask. And subsequent to that, the officers returned and the tourist was still seen without wearing her mask. And based on that, again, the officers went and warned her to wear her mask, and she went off on the officers. Now, let me make it clear that the quarantine regulation that is currently in force do not make any provision for persons who are eating or drinking in public not to be wearing a mask. However, as a matter of our internal practice, we have advised our officers that if a person is eating or drinking in public or any public space, then we must exercise our discretion. And so it was in that light that I had said that the officers may have overreacted and could have used the discretion. But equally, it must be understood that the tourists must abide by the law. And the officers, even in the video footage that you would see, the officers did try to exercise some level of patience in how they dealt with her. But at the end of the day, we don't want to promote an environment that will not be conducive to our tourists, especially in a time like this.
Would you agree that she showed some sort of entitlement because she's an American tourist? She mentioned it.
Well, that can be deduced from what she said. But again, as a department, we strive to be professional. And I could understand the reason why the officers may have run out of patience. You know, you're trying to explain to a person the position of the law and they're adamant. And she was very crafty in what she did because she actually took the piece of meat and said, I'm eating. And so that captured the attention of the Belizean people, and so the Belizean people reacted the way they did towards the officers.
We reached out to the Belize Tourism Board on the tourism implications of the incident, but up to news time, there was no comment. There was another caught on camera moment with police revealed over the weekend. The video shows a police officer using a chokehold on a civilian. The incident reportedly happened in Santa Elena Cayo, and reports are that the man was drunk driving. The video was upsetting to the public because the police department has a policy against chokeholds to subdue persons. Once again, Commissioner of Police Chester Williams says that there is more than what the video shows.
Yes, I did saw a video last night again on social media with an officer who was holding a person in a chokehold. Again, I listened to the voices in the video, and I heard where people were saying that those who were recording chose to record at a certain point, but they did not record what took place before. I am made to understand that the individual was under the influence, and the police tried arduously to contain him, and he was still behaving disorderly. If a matter of fact, you even saw in the video where the police tried to put him in the vehicle, and he still was resisting and was fighting. Now, I'm not going to justify the actions of the officer in terms of putting the person in a chokehold, because we do have a policy following the George Floyd incident in the U.S. We created our own internal policy to the effect that police officers in Belize are no longer to use the chokehold as a method to be able to restrain a person. And so the officer in question conduct would go against our internal policy. And for that, I have directed PSB to look at it. But at the end of the day, too, we have to be reasonable, and I don't think that it is something that warrants that the police officer be killed.
In the north, a police officer has been charged with the crime of manslaughter. He is Police Constable Leonard Cahun. The incident happened in 2018 at the house of Ariel Audinet Salazar. 8 lawmen, PC Cahun, BDF soldiers Mateo Balon, Patrick Villagran, Patrick Diego, Elvis Cobb, Edmar Petillo, Vladimir Escaraga, and Francisco Show were charged for Salazar's murder and the attempted murder of Oscar Pays. The case against the brutal 8 was struck out after police officers failed to carry out a directive from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. That directive has now been carried out. It has been ordered that these men be rearrested and recharged for the killing of Salazar. On that unfortunate day, the law enforcement officers stormed Salazar's house after a woman told them that Salazar had taken her cell phone. The men took it upon themselves to savagely beat Salazar and Pays, leaving them for dead. Pays recovered, but Salazar did not. Investigators are looking for the remaining culprits for them to be charged.
As you were aware, himself, along with other members of the Belize Special Assignment Group, BSAG, were previously arrested, and then for some reason the case was struck out. However, further investigation was done, and the DPP ordered that they be rearrested and that charges be instituted against them. So far, it is only Cahun that has been found, along with another person that was brought into custody this morning, who is also going to be charged today.
That matter is one which has been in the pipeline for some time. I guess it was only a matter for the investigator to complete certain directives that the DPP had given. Those directives have been complied with, and so the directives was given from the DPP to proceed with manslaughter charges against the police and the members of the BDF, then BISA, which is now the Special Assignment Team, who are involved in the beating death of the young man in Orange Walktown.
Another police officer is making the news, this time for sexually assaulting a 19-year-old woman 3 times. Police Corporal Edgar Teol stands accused of sexually violating a woman while she was bailing out her common-law husband from the police station in San Jose Sacats village. The 19-year-old told investigators that on the 18th of January, she went to the station to sign bail, and that is when PC Teol allegedly assaulted her. If the name sounds familiar, that's because Teol is the same officer investigated in the missing gun case in Sacats. PC Teol has been placed on interdiction.
A 19-year-old woman reported to police that she had visited the Sacats police station in order to sign bail for her common-law husband, who was detained for wounding. As a result, during the process, she alleges that whilst in the station awaiting to be bailed, awaiting to sign the bail, she was sexually assaulted by PC Teol on 3 different occasions. As a result, an investigation was carried out where PC Teol has since been arrested and charged for 3 counts of sexual assault.
We have seen over the past few months a number of criminal behavior on the part of some officers. We have those who are arrested for large quantity of drugs, and it is a part of our effort to go after those officers who we know are involved in different illegal activities. The public is clamoring for a more professional police department. We have a minister who is working with us, doing his best to see how we can make the department more professional. And so as a department, we need to do differently. We need to ensure that we hold officers accountable for their wrongdoing. What PC Teol did in Sacats was utterly wrong. He violated that young woman without her consent, and she made a report, and he must be dealt with.
The criminal case against former UDP Works Minister Rene Montero is active. His successor, Minister of Infrastructure Development and Housing, Julius Espat, has forwarded documentary evidence to the Commissioner of Police, the Integrity Commission, and the Attorney General Office. SBAT requested the investigation into the possible commission of criminal offenses by Montero for the wanton and prolonged abuse and misuse of the Ministry of Works' resources for private gain. Montero refutes these assertions. The Belize Police Department is compiling evidence. When the process is complete, they will send the file to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, who will then give directives on how to proceed. Today, Police Commissioner Chester Williams says that he sees a degree of criminal wrongdoing from what he's read.
The investigators are in possession of that matter. We recorded a number of statements last week, and we have a number of other statements that we're going to be recording this week. I have read some of the statements that were recorded, and yes, we're seeing some degree of criminal wrongdoing. And as soon as the investigators have completed the investigation and put the file together, we're going to forward it to the DPP for her guidance on that matter.
Criminal wrongdoings on the part of alleged criminal wrongdoings on the part of Mr. Montero or Mr. Boots?
I'm not going to say at this time. Whenever we're completed with the investigation, then we'll disclose whatever information we have to the public.
The government is soon to announce new quarantine measures which will take effect on February 1st. But what will those restrictions look like? Since December, there's been a curfew in place from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., along with a mandatory mask use, practicing social distance, a maximum gathering of 10 persons, and a ban on inter-district traveling for the Corozal and Orange Walk districts. Since then, there has been an overall reduction in the number of active cases. The additional restrictions in the north seem to have made some impact. So, will similar measures be implemented in Belize or Cayo districts where an increase in cases has been reported? Minister Michel Shabat was very guarded with his response to the new measures when we asked him about it this afternoon.
I'm not going to really speak about that right now, but I can tell you that we have been listening. We have been listening to the public. We know what the needs out there, but at the same time, from the Ministry of Health and Wellness point of view, we have an obligation to safeguard our citizens. And so we are looking at some changes for the 1st of February, but I cannot yet say what they are.
Is the curfew really effective? Will that stand, in that sense?
Absolutely it is. If you see, as a matter of fact, the numbers have been decreasing. They have been decreasing, and yes, it is true that in Cayo and in Belize district we have seen an upsurge in number. But for example, in the northern districts where we actually implemented an inter-district traveling, a ban, you have seen the numbers gone down dramatically. And so I beg to argue with you and differ with you that in fact the regulations we have in place are working. The curfew has worked. The fact that we have stopped the sale of liquor very early on in the evening are also factors that are contributing to the lowering of the numbers.
So maybe inter-district banning movement for Belize district and Cayo as well?
Stay tuned.
Ministry officials are still unsure whether the new UK or South African strains of the novel coronavirus are in Belize. The UK variant has been detected in neighboring Mexico. As we reported on Friday, samples have been sent to Baylor College of Medicine and CARFA to test if any of the new variants are in Belize. Health and Wellness Minister Michel Shabat says that the ministry is concerned, especially about the possibility of a third wave.
That strain is of concern to us, and we are looking at it very closely because we're concerned about a third wave in Belize. We had the Henry Reeve Brigade leave after being here almost 12 months. They were supposed to be here only for 6. They have left. Some of the doctors from the regular brigade also left, and we had a contingent come in Saturday evening. I believe it's about 28 medical officers to replace some of those who left.
When we come back, we'll tell you the story about the $250,000 lawsuit against the Commissioner, Ministry of Home Affairs, and Attorney General.
Dear Belize,
Thieves targeted another school in the St. Martin de Porres area. Last Friday morning, the criminals broke into St. Vernon High School and stole 96 tablets. The electronic devices were recently acquired for distance learning and were to be distributed to students today. It is believed that the community members which the school serves were involved in the crime. News 5's Dwayne Moody reports.
Today was the official day for the handing over of tablets to students from 2nd and 3rd form classes at St. Vernon High School in Belize City. But that distribution exercise could not happen because in the wee hours of Friday morning, thieves broke into the office and stole about 100 tablets.
I got a call from the principal stating that a break-in occurred. I live nearby, so I came over, and when I came, I found 2 officers here along with the security on duty. And at the back of my office, I noticed 1 louver missing from the window. And I peeped in and I saw that several boxes were at my desk area. And I immediately notified the officers of the contents of my office that I thought would have been missing. And I told her that I had 140 tablets in the office total. I have a laptop for the school that was right by the window area in the bag, and then I noticed the DVR wasn't on the shelf underneath the television.
The school acquired the tablets only 3 days before the break-in. After a number of them were programmed and ready for distribution, the students and their parents were notified on Thursday that the tablets were at the office and pickup would take place today. It is believed that someone leaked that information to the thieves who removed the louver from the office and stole the electronic devices. They also took the DVR with the recording of the crime.
A total of 100 were unaccounted for, but in one of the boxes, a device was in it. 2 was on my desk, and the officers had found 1 behind the building in the Lake Independence Baptist yard. So that was 4. A total of 96 was missing. None of the headsets were missing, just the garbage bags, and then the DVR. On Friday, it was a hectic day. We had to try to check the ones that we had to see which are the ones that were gone, so that we could provide ministry and the police officers with that information. And then we received 35 in garbage bags. We found them at the gate about 10:30. 3 garbage bags were at the gate, and
Did someone put them there?
yeah, but we were having meetings, right? And no one was at the gate. I came out and I found 3 bags at the gate. And so I called the principal to bring it to her attention, and then she came out and we recorded the numbers. The police officers came.
The bags with 35 tablets were left at the gate after the school reached out to the students and their parents, explaining the impact on their education. 19 were also found in an area behind WASA, and so there are currently 42 still missing. Secretary Sherry Hammond says that the institution feels betrayed because since the COVID pandemic, they have been helping the community with grocery items, the most recent on January 11th and another scheduled for early February.
I do believe it's someone from the community. The investigations show that the police camera saw people walking on Morning Glory Street, heading over the bridge, with the bags. So it's right within the area.
A woman has been detained and charged for handling stolen goods as investigation continues into this burglary.
Police conducted an investigation into this matter. So far, 56 tablets have been recovered, and a female by the name of Lena Gabriel was arrested and charged for handling stolen goods.
Sir, now that you know the identity of this person, does this appear to be an inside job?
Well, it is. We know that they have a security that is working there during the entire night. He was questioned, and we suspect that it could have been some inside job as to where exactly these laptops were.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
On Monday, January 4th, detainee Gregory Bowen was found dead in his cell at the Queen Street Police Station. Police reported his death as an apparent suicide. In an interview with the media following the incident, The Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, said that officers conducted hourly checks on the detainee and that the police were not aware of any mental issues that Bowen may have suffered. While that was the police department's official account, Bowen's family does not believe that he committed suicide. His siblings are demanding that police provide the evidence to corroborate the police's version of what transpired. The family also maintains that the police did know of Bowen's mental health issues, as the family would often call for police assistance when he was off his medication and having outbursts. The family has since sought the services of attorney Urson Elrington. The attorney has written to the Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, Minister of Home Affairs, Karim Musa, and Attorney General Magali Marin-Young with a wrongful death claim. The family is seeking monetary compensation of $205,000 to cover funeral expenses, pain, suffering, and other damages.
I believe it was on the 4th of January, earlier in this year, that Mr. Bowen tragically lost his life while in the custody of the Belize Police Department. Regrettably, the duty of care which he was owed as a prisoner or as a person who is under the custody or detention of the police department was not adhered to. And that negligence on behalf of the police department tragically resulted in him losing his life. I think that on an interview, I heard the Commissioner of Police state the fact that there is a heightened burden on the Belize Police Department if a person suffers from any type of mental illness. And I'm not too sure with my previous interview if I was able to say so, but indeed that was exactly the circumstance of Mr. Bowen. He was a person suffering from mental illness, and this was known to the Belize Police Department, not only in this singular instance, but he had had several different encounters with the Belize Police Department, and so the Belize Police Department knew, or at minimum should have known, that he was a person suffering from mental illness. Definitely the arresting officers on that day knew of it.
Elrington added that the unfortunate incident is similar to the tragedy that befell the Vasquez family when their loved one, Nestor Vasquez Jr., also known to have mental health issues, died while in police custody in June 2019. The family's attorney calls it a systematic breakdown.
The parallels are eerie, and in fact, it speaks to the very nature of this matter, that this is a systematic breakdown. And in fact, I remember so vividly during that time that one of the calls of the family was beyond the compensation. They wanted to see structural changes to address this dire need of those suffering from mental illness in Belize. It is so parallel because indeed it is, the circumstances was that the deceased was suffering from a episode, and the family, having no other alternative, turned to the police. And in turning to the police similarly were negligent in their duty of care. And so the two circumstances are on all fours. And so we have two documented cases of persons suffering from mental illness who have tragically lost their lives in, I would want to say less than 2 years.
The National Forensic Science Services assists the police department with carrying out postmortems on about 500 bodies a year. These are in the cases when a person's death is classified as sudden, unexpected, unexplained, suspicious, and violent deaths. With support from the U.S. Embassy, the government is working to strengthen Belize's medical legal death investigation system, specifically as it relates to the Medical Examiner's Office, a unit within the department. Executive Director Gian Cho told News 5 that the goal is to improve the department's human resources to consistently provide independent, accurate, complete information to support death investigations.
The staff size is very small, but compared to what it was before 2013, it was just one doctor assisting police. We now have 3. So the staff size is growing, and this effort here is to ensure that we have adequate training, on-the-job continuous medical education in the area of forensic pathology, and ultimately certification, in-country certification, or what other places call board certification for our medical examiners, which means that they go through a certain number of CME hours per year. They undergo professional development opportunities to stay ahead of the field of forensic medicine and forensic pathology. So who came to assist with this is Dr. Roger Mitchell. He is currently the Chief Medical Examiner in Washington, D.C. He initially came to Belize back in 2018 to do an assessment of the medical examiner's office. So this is the next step forward. It took us a couple of years, but we're getting there. To try to institute regular training, on-the-job training for our medical examiners, and for any new medical examiners that come on board at the NFSS. And like I said, ultimately to have in-country certification to offer a measure of quality assurance for our staff.
Executive Director Cho says that there are also infrastructure and equipment needs of the department that are also being addressed. The 2 other units under the NFSS department are the scenes of crime and the forensics lab. More than 1,000 young men and women from across the country performed successfully in the police exams. The next step to becoming a police officer is passing the interview segment, which for Caracol and Orange Walk residents was done today at the Police Training Academy in Bamopan. Dozens of hopefuls waited patiently for their time to be interviewed, but there's only space for about 225 officers. According to Commissioner Williams, those who don't make it to the end will be placed on standby if any recruit decided to leave while on training.
We have finally corrected all the exam papers, that is 2,700 plus. And we have a number of passes. I think it is little over 1,000 of those persons who are successful in the exam. And so what we commence today is bringing those persons who were successful in the exam to the academy to undergo an interview. And so today we're dealing with Orange Walk and Caracol. Those persons who are successful in interviews will move on to the 3rd stage of elimination, which is going to be the vetting. And then from the vetting we eliminate further, and then we go to the medical, and from the medical we eliminate, and then we come up with our final list. One must understand that we only have vacancy for 225. We cannot go beyond that because we don't have the budgetary allocation for it. And so those persons who may not be as fortunate, then we might just have to tell them, you know what, next time round, we'll consider you.
Just also, do you have a standby list, just in case? Because I know when it comes to the drilling, that at the time where this one, remember, he want to go home, he can't take it.
Yes, of course, Brother Fem, and again, that is something that we normally do, and I think that this time around we're going to have a bigger standby list, because the fact that they will not be able to leave the academy for 3 months, that in itself may deter some of them, or may discourage some of them while here to leave. You know, some of those young men are very jealous. They hear that their girlfriend, they pack up the things and they roll.
After the break, Andrea Palanco takes us into the Chiquibul. Over the years, we've reported on the transboundary threats to the Chiquibul Forest, the illicit activities that were carried out almost exclusively by Guatemalans. Those activities include illegal logging, cattle ranching, and poaching. And over the years, Friends for Conservation and Development have employed a number of strategies to address these incursions. Now, they're gearing up to prepare for new threats on the horizon. This time, these threats are not cross-border. These threats are internal and very local in nature. News 5 joined the FCD and government officials for a two-day trip to the Chiquibul to learn more about why this protected area could be facing new threats and what government can do to help. Here's that report.
The Chiquibul National Park is the largest protected area in Belize, and for years, Guatemalans have been the biggest threat to this protected area. As co-manager of this protected area, the Friends for Conservation and Development has been tackling the illicit activities carried out by Guatemalans. While they haven't been able to eradicate the activities, they've been able to drastically reduce illegal logging and chaté extraction, agricultural expansion, gold panning, among other illicit activities. But with the FCD's handle on the Guatemalan incursions, they're now preparing to take on a new set of threats once the Caracol Road is built.
The opening and the upgrade of the road to Caracol, certainly that is going to open up more the area that has for a long time really been more inaccessible. The Chiquibul, Natural Arch, Ceibo Chico, all of those zones. So accessibility can, of course, bring other challenges if it's really unregulated.
The Chiquibul Forest account for some 7.7% of Belize's landmass. Most of it is unexplored and rich in resources, covered in thick jungles where the FCD rangers and BDF soldiers enforce the laws. So it's safe to say that most Belizeans have never visited this site that is tucked away in western Belize. Director of FCD, Rene Montero, is concerned that the multi-million-dollar Caracol Road project may bring more problems for this protected area.
You can get more people coming in, either to do even illicit actions like hunting, poaching. Visitation can bring also forest fires if they are not really properly well regulated. So in reality, there are more internal issues now that we will need now to start to think, to plan, and basically to put in interventions.
And Manzanero hopes that the government will be able to put some of those measures in place. And so to highlight the challenges and show the value of this forest, Minister Orlando Habet and CEO Kenrick Williams of the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction visited the Chiquibul this weekend. The government officials visited the nesting sites of endangered scarlet macaws along the Chalillo Lake, toured the Las Cuevas Research Station, among other activities.
Certainly, the interest of the ministry is to make sure that these lands and properties and actually our resources are managed efficiently for the larger good of the Belizean people. We can see that coming in, especially in the Pine Ridge area before we reach the Chiquibul, there's a lot of denuding of the forest, and we're losing a lot of our biodiversity. And so as a government, we need to make certain that this biodiversity is maintained.
But the balance between conservation and economic interests can become blurred, especially for a developing country whose economy has been weakened by COVID-19 and being led by a new government with no money to make good on their election promises. With the road, this area will open up. The sale of real estate in the Mountain Pine Ridge area is bound to bring tourism and other development projects in the next couple of years. The FCD is worried about those possibilities and what they mean for this protected area.
We are highly concerned, of course, because it is really a thin line. Sustainable development, and then how do you really do the protection also of the key resources that one has. If we look at water resources, for example, that is very much key. Well, how much value does the country really is willing to put into that for the long haul? Here we are standing on a main key headwater for the Macal and for other sub-watersheds. So do we really want a development that is really more open ground like this, or do we want really to capture it as a true headwater? Is it going to be more the economical values in the short term, or is it really more the kind of the long term, the benefits that one would be able to accrue from these resources?
CEO Kenrick Williams says that the Sustainable Development Plan for the Chiquibul Complex will help to guide the use of these resources. The governance framework outlines all the interests and how these will be managed harmoniously. The key part of that is the agreement between the co-managers, like the FCD and the government of Belize.
We see the threats, we see the challenges that they experience daily. Just getting to location, just getting to site, you've experienced some of the difficulty. The government of Belize is a partner in co-management, and so we have to ensure that we have the requisite resources, support to our co-management partners like FCD. And so one of the key things that we have been working on at the ministry is looking at the commitment that is required in terms of the government of Belize and the support that is required to these co-management agencies. Several of them don't even have an official tenureship. They don't have a co-management agreement in place with the government. And so we are really looking at some of those frameworks, the specific agreement and the support that we can provide to entities like FCD to be able to adequately do their work.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
The Caracol Road project was always a divisive issue in the House of Representatives. The road is being done in phases, and the current administration has shared that they do not support the entire project. In the first week of January, Minister of Infrastructure Julius Espat told the press that he supports the first two phases, but the third portion from Blancanoe Lodge to Caracol Archaeological Site hasn't been awarded, and he would like to see the monies be used for something else. It's left to be seen if that will happen, but one of the other government ministers who had always criticized the project is Orlando Habet, Cayo Northeast area representative. Habet says that he believes the project was pushed by the previous administration because of certain interests in the area. On our trip to the Chiquibul over the weekend, News 5 has learned that hundreds of acres in the mountain pine ridge are now allegedly owned by former government ministers. While Minister Habet has his view on the land and new road, the parceling of lands is also a concern for the co-manager of the Chiquibul National Park. Here's what they had to say about the issue.
I think in this regard, especially with our trip here to the Chiquibul, that we don't know who, but we know that during the past few years, a lot of land has been distributed up in this area of the mountain pine ridge. Certainly, if we don't put some controls on it and we don't know what they're doing, then further destruction can come out if, depending on the type of development. I was one during the past administration who in cabinet, at the House of Representatives, had mentioned that I was not in full approval of the construction of this road because I always thought that there was an ulterior motive for construction of this road to Caracol. While we believe that an upgraded road can be constructed, an all-weather road, it wasn't worth spending $180 million on this road when we had other priorities.
You know, we finished an advocacy strategy just about 4 months ago. The recommendation basically there is that the government should put a freeze on all of the protected areas, particularly forest reserves, for the same reason that there has been more of the subdivisions and dereservations, even though the dereservations might not have passed through the proper guidelines and the protocols. So the freezing is one of the key recommendations that has been already offered and provided by FCD under its advocacy strategy.
Commissioner of Police Chester Williams also spoke of the ongoing investigation concerning Wilbur Vallejos, the former lands commissioner. Viewers will recall that Vallejos' residence in Pachacan Village was raided and police found over $60,000 in various currencies and denominations. Officers called in the Financial Intelligence Unit, which is now leading the investigation. But as of tonight, no charges have been laid against Vallejos.
That matter is still with the FIU. They are the ones who have control of that investigation. Yes, the police are a part of it, and we are awaiting the guidance from them in terms of what has been done. We know that certain applications were to be made to the court or through the director of FIU for us to be able to have access to bank accounts and other financial information. So I believe that there is where the investigation currently is.
There were no charges against anyone as yet?
At this time, no.
This morning in Belize City, many persons gathered at the office of the Lands Department near the Cemetery Road roundabout. News 5 understands that those individuals were all applicants for first-time land ownership. The gathering outside of the building drew the attention of passers-by, and the police were called in to enforce the COVID-19 regulations. It seems that with the implementation of a new application system, applicants believed that the schedule for the process was temporary and rushed to the office this morning. To avoid the crowd in the future, the Lands Department has requested that appointments for no more than 15 persons be made in the morning and another 15 in the afternoon, Monday to Friday. In other news from the Ministry of Natural Resources, Deputy Prime Minister Cordell Hyde was in Dangriga once again this past weekend, where he met with residents concerning the issuance of land in Stan Creek District. Viewers would recall that Hyde was in Dangriga on January 14th for a similar clinic. Tensions between the Valley of Peace Farmers Association and Valley of Peace Farms Limited got high last week. The farmers are blaming the company for damaging their crops. Chairman of the association, Ever Blandon, says that Valley of Peace Farms Limited carried out aerial spraying using chemicals that eventually killed their crops. Manager of Valley of Peace Farms Limited, Gilbert Canton Jr., says it wasn't them. Canton Jr. did say that the company conducted aerial spraying, but 1.5 miles away from the farmers' crops. Today, we got both sides of the story.
We put down a spray. We used two chemicals, famecifin and clethodim. One is a grass killer and one is a broadleaf killer. And we put it down on a field about 1.5 miles northeast of their farms. We had westerly winds that day, so it would have been very difficult for that spray to travel at 1.5 miles and come down and damage them. However, they said they were seeing some damage, and so we asked the Ministry of Agriculture to come out and do an assessment. We also did an assessment, and we found that what they were experiencing was not consistent with two things. It was not consistent with the damage that would have been done by the chemicals that we used, and second, the indications were not consistent with what we call sprayer blight, which is damage caused by a sprayer. In terms of sprayer blight, you would damage just certain crops. If you notice in their complaint, your cucumbers and their lettuce and tomatoes were damaged. The beans were not. If our spray had hit, everything would have been damaged. The grass, the beans, not just a few crops.
He was spraying the mile and a half maybe, but the thing that the plane come all the way to the farmer or to do their turn. So I suspect that may be the issue why those crops were burned.
So the Ministry of Agriculture is doing their own investigation. Have you heard anything from them so far?
Not yet. Yes, they are doing their own investigation, but still we have not received no report from them.
Okay, so talk to us about the damage itself. How many plants are we talking about? The types of plants? How many farmers are being affected? And of course, the value of damage caused to the crops.
Well, there are about 15 farmers that are complaining of the same issue. We don't have an exact value of the damage of the crops. Some crops are recovering, like cucumber. I have seen some cucumber that are recovering from that burn. Cilantro, well, cilantro was not recovered. Some lettuce, yes, are recovering. So, but the damage was done. But the message here is that we don't want that this continual occurrence, right? It has happened but 2 to 3 times in the past, and I think this cannot continue more.
But the tensions got higher over the weekend when 2 separate parcels of cane fields belonging to Valley of Peace Farms Limited were set on fire. Less than 10 acres of cane field were set ablaze on Saturday, and another large field was set on fire on Saturday. Investigators believe it was arson, and today we caught up with Manager Gilbert Canton Jr. at the Roaring Creek Police Station, where he asked for an investigation to be done. But the farmers are certain that the investigation won't lead to them because they had nothing to do with it. Chairman of the association, Ever Blandon, says that his farmers are all about keeping the peace.
We had a burning in a cane field. About 10 acres were burned on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we had another burning in a field that we're preparing to plant sugarcane on. Two separate incidents. Are they related to the spray? Are they related to the land dispute? Are they related to just someone's kid or someone else that has gotten to the point of being disgruntled that they decide to do something on their own? I can't say, but that's why we're here at the Warren Creek Police Station to ask the police to do an investigation into both incidents, and hopefully they can help us find out what happened exactly.
I am pretty sure that none of my farmers are in that thing, and we have an agreement with farmers. Any farmer who enter in that arson and doing something to the value of peace, because we want peace with the company, right? We have an agreement. If they were found guilty doing that, well, they have to face the law.
If it is that anyone is found to have been responsible or that the cane fields were intentionally lit on fire, then thereafter then he would then proceed with requesting court action into the matter.
So we know that last week there was some rising tensions between the company and Valley of Peace farmers. Is police looking at that angle perhaps?
Yes, we are.
Still to come, $1 million donation to the KHMH COVID unit.
If you or a loved one
There were 0 COVID-19 deaths recorded over the weekend, and today the Ministry of Health and Wellness reported 3 deaths from COVID-19. The recent statistics show the daily positivity rate trending downwards and a slight improvement in the cumulative positivity rate. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has embarked on a number of campaigns to assist persons with compliance to safety measures. Today, Minister Shabat also gave an update on a timeline for acquiring the COVID-19 vaccine, which he says should be about 30% of the total population sometime within the first quarter of this year.
We signed on to the COVAX facility, and we are still in discussion with PAHO to determine exactly which vaccine will be coming into the country. They have said to us in the first quarter of this year where to receive it, but we're still waiting to see exactly which date it will be arriving and which one. We have paid for 30% so far, but we are not sure yet if we're going to be receiving the 30%. This is
the Ministry of Health and Wellness today handed over $1 million worth of equipment to improve the COVID-19 services at the Carl Hischer Memorial Hospital. The equipment was acquired under the Briceño administration. The National Referral Hospital had requested the equipment in March of 2020 for its COVID isolation unit. The unit has since grown to accommodate up to 23 persons, each with accompanying beds, ventilators, and patient monitoring units. News 5 was at the brief handing over ceremony this afternoon.
As you all know, the ventilators are critical for us, and so are the high-flow machines. As a matter of fact, the use of the high-flow machines in many instances help to obviate the need to use the ventilators. So the equipment you see here are critical in the fight against COVID.
In terms of the COVID isolation management, it was planned for a 10-bed response. Of course, we had to implement a surge plan, and with the surge plan, there are additional beds that were allocated for COVID response. So we are at a total of 23 COVID beds and 13 beds for suspect cases. So these were outstanding for us for some time, and so we are very pleased that we are now able to get the quantities of ventilators and patient monitors that we need to efficiently and effectively manage our patients in the COVID unit.
Typically, for one patient, you need 4 infusion pumps, and we've had to do without for a very long time. So we have now 30 new infusion pumps, 8 in total that we've received from the ministry. It makes it easier to be able to provide the medications in a timely manner so that the outcomes can be better, no?
Belize City Center is going to be under new management. We'll tell you more when we come back.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions,
The Belize City Center was inaugurated with much fanfare when it opened its doors on April 30th, 2018. That was at least 2 years before COVID-19 became a reality. In the time before the pandemic made its way to Belize, the building was hardly in use, despite the number of scheduled events necessary for its stakeholders to turn a profit. Since March of last year, the giant sliding doors that protect the structure have remained shut, and the future of the facility, built from Petrocarib largesse, was up in the air. In the coming months, the Civic will be turned over to the Ministry of Sports, Youth and E-Governance, and the plans are to join forces with the Belize City Council to operate and maintain the sporting complex. News 5's Isani Caetano reports.
The Belize City Center, one of several multi-million-dollar facilities constructed through Belize Infrastructure Limited, remains closed to the public. Aside from the COVID-19 pandemic, which has forced the indefinite suspension of many, if not all, sporting activities, a new political administration is in office, and there are questions regarding the building's usage and upkeep. Taking over from former Minister of Sports is Kevin Bernard, whose portfolio also includes youths and governance.
Currently, it is still under the control of Bill. Bill is now under the Ministry of Infrastructure and Housing. However, I must say that the National Sports Council, the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Governance, will be writing to the Prime Minister and to the Minister of Infrastructure, because we are told that the said management contract has come to an end. It has expired, and they are now looking at handing over the Civic Center back to the Ministry of Youth and Sports and E-Governance now, since it's a sporting facility.
Built at an estimated cost of 34 million Belize dollars, the Civic Center stands as one of the most expensive structures in the country, and its maintenance alone carries an exorbitant cost. It is not clear what, if any, profits have been realized from the use of the facility. The management contract to which Minister Bernard alludes was an agreement between Apex Events Service and the previous government.
We at the NSC and under my ministry, we are finding ways in terms of how we can partner with the Belize City Council in terms of the management of this facility and the proper use and maintenance of the facility. I must say that from just the estimates that we are told, the monthly maintenance cost is very high. And the current budget that the National Sports Council has will never be able to sustain the maintenance of that building.
In March 2018, upon assuming management of the facility, Chad Eckert informed of the many potential uses of the edifice and its outdoor spaces. Notwithstanding the COVID-19 pandemic, which shuttered the building, its usage on a month-to-month basis was limited to only a few events.
We can have large conventions, small conventions, you have business meetings, you can have trainings. It's basically unlimited for whatever idea you can have here. There's multiple, and we're going to be creating multiple rental venue spots in the building alone. I think we've come up with about 7 different areas in the building that could be rented individually or even simultaneously. You can also have, one of our ideas is where you can rent the inside as well as the outside. You can have like a large expo or something where you can have vendors on the inside, you can have them wrapped around the court inside here, around upstairs, you can have them all out in the parking lot as well.
Despite an unspecified delay in the resumption of sporting activities, Minister Bernard says that it is important to regain control of the facility and its management. Director of Sports Oscar Arnold is also a member of the Belize City Council and is himself a sports enthusiast.
We feel that it is critical that we get back hold of the Civic Center. There's a lot of potential that we can utilize the center for, and I believe that we cannot continue having it sitting there. The more that building is not put to use, it's going to run down. It's going to be another eyesore if we don't get to that building. And so I know last week when I met with the director and of course my CEO and I, we have been discussing, and I briefly reached out to the Minister of Infrastructure Development, Honorable Julius, who also supports our initiative in taking over back the Civic Center, so that we can properly start to manage that Civic Center. And you know, as part of our plan, our phased-in approach of sports, we are in this pandemic, but we are also looking at ways how we can get back these facilities up to track.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
Going digital is the new direction that the government of Belize plans on taking. It is expected that this administration will introduce significant changes during their 5-year mandate. The Minister of Youth, Sports and E-Governance is tasked to increase efficiency and cost-effectiveness in delivering public services. The work began last week with an e-governance task force appointed, comprised of public and private sector stakeholders, Jose Urbina and Juan Carlos Namis. They co-chair the task force. According to Minister Kevin Bernard, the aim is to create an online platform where a range of public services can be provided using a national identification system.
You will notice that the task force is made up of people from various backgrounds and ministries and other areas in the private sector, where we can create that linkages. But the main purpose of this is to see where we're going to start, where other ministries, including the private sector, can benefit from what we're going to do in terms of achieving e-governance in this country. When you look at the experiences in Estonia and other countries in the digital services, it reduces the lot of red tape. It reduces the time wasted on people having to fill out manual documents to apply for a simple passport, for example, to apply for a land document, to apply for your birth paper. You know, right now we have where you use your social security for this, you use your voter's ID for the other, you use your driver's license for the other. The goal is to, at some point, develop a national ID which will link everything in this country, your medical records, your birth records, you can even communicate with those services outside of the public sector, include like your banking and so forth.
As for CITO, Government Central Information Technology Office, it will be the digital hub for delivering those internet-based services. The idea, says the Minister of E-Governance, is to convert 95% of the existing services to the online platform by the end of this term of office.
The Central Information Technology Office will basically be transformed into an e-governance department of our ministry, where we're going to be expanding and working and restructuring that department so that it focuses on our goal, where we want to go down the road. Like I said, we have a deadline. Within 5 years, it is our hope to attain 95% digitization. Now, what does this also mean for us is that we will need the buy-in of everybody. We need the buy-in of both our colleagues in the other ministries. We need the buy-in of the public servants. We will need the buy-in of our residents across the country who uses government services, because it is all about an ease of doing business in this country as well. People come to this country and want to do a land transaction. They don't want to be waiting in line so long to do one transaction. We need to start to ensure that everything is on utilizing technology, and so we can't be left behind.
And that's the news. Tonight's broadcast is available in text at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at News 5 Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, and stay safe. Good night.